Welcome to the Real Life Podcasts with your hosts, leadership and personal growth author and speaker John C. Donahue and licensed psychotherapist Lou Carfisi. The Real Life Podcast is your weekly dose of motivation, encouragement, and direction to help you live your life at the highest level.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Life Podcast. If you're watching live, welcome. Thank you for watching. If you're watching a previously recorded episode, thank you for watching. If you're listening, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to myself and my co-host talk about different topics. And every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time here on blab.im, we do a live blab. We talk for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we open up the floor, and we have people on different webcams from all across the world can come in and interact with us. We have a chat room. We'd love for you to come there, ask your questions, and that's who we are and what we're doing here. Let's introduce ourselves. Like I said, my name's John. Joining me is Lou Carfisi. Lou, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Lou can be found at lifecarecounseling.net. Lou is a psychotherapist. He's an amazing counselor. He's a great friend. He's amazing at what he does. You can find me over on johncdonahue.com. I'm a life coach. I deal with a lot of different issues from the business world and relationships. I dip into a lot of different things, and you can always find me over there. So let's go ahead and get started. You ready, my friend?
I'm ready. Let's rip it up.
All right. So we do a newsletter every Sunday. You can go to reallifepodcast.com and sign up for that newsletter. And this past newsletter, for when we recorded this, I wrote a little article about giving yourself permission to fail. And Lou and I had an interesting discussion after it came out. And he said, well, that's great, but you know, there's a lot of people out there who struggle with giving themselves permission to succeed. And then we thought, well, that'd be a great topic for us to discuss today. So why don't you, Lou, start off by talking about people who struggle with giving themselves permission to succeed?
A lot of people, and I was one of these people a long time ago, don't think enough of themselves to be able to accept praise or accolades or even somebody who's commenting on a success we may or may not have. And because of who we are and what our experiences have been to this point, we are unable to fully appreciate when somebody says to us, hey, good job, you did a great job, or you know, you're a good, worthwhile, worthy person, and when you did this, you succeeded and you were awesome. Okay, a lot of people can't accept that, and with people who feel that way, it just bounces right off them and just goes away, and we never really acknowledge it for ourselves.
Now, is that something that came about through, and I don't want to delve too deep into your personal life. That's not what I'm asking. Like people who are like this, is that that nature and nurture? That's the way you're brought up, or some people just wired that way? Their disposition happens to be that way, or is that something that's learned? I don't want to say skill, but is that something that's learned over time, or is that just we're born that way?
Well, it's really a mixture of all those things, but the main thing is how we were brought up. You know, we always like to look to the past, and no, this isn't a rap session against your parents or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that parents don't know how to parent until somebody teaches them how to parent. So they make mistakes. And I'm a parent, and I've made mistakes as well. So I'm including myself in that group of people. But when we're not told at specific and correct times in our upbringing so that we can climb the developmental ladder, when we're not told that we did a good job or we're appreciated or we're loved in certain ways by our parents, who we think the most of anybody else in the world, then we wind up believing that, well, maybe I'm not that great. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not as good as the next fellow because the next fellow feels he can accept these comments and compliments without any hesitation. And people who suffer from low self-esteem and low self-image normally are unable to accept a lot of these things.
Right. And that dovetails perfectly into kind of my point of view when I wrote the articles, dealing with people who can't allow themselves uh, to fail. The flip side of the situation that you're talking about is someone who is driven by low self-esteem, or maybe they weren't encouraged properly when they were growing up in their formative years, and they have to be perfect. These are the perfectionists, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with someone to try to do a good job and to make something as good as it can be. But I think that if you step back and look at the situation, I think we all kind of get an idea. There's people that we can think about in our past, or maybe, people that we know who really kind of overdo it. Now, these are the people who work on projects far longer and harder than they need to. These are people that will not allow a project to be done until they've just almost killed themselves, and they have to turn it in because they absolutely have to, not because they think that it's ready. And these are people that struggle with failure. They never want to fail, and they don't want to allow themselves to fail because I think that, they're thinking that they're not a good person unless they're always winning, always succeeding. And one of the greatest stories about failure and overcoming that and learning from failure and succeeding is Michael Jordan. And he's got a great quote that he says, and I quote, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games, and 26 times," he says, "I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and he missed." And this is kind of the point of what I'm saying about people who can't give themselves permission to fail. Right. Jordan says, "I failed over and over and over again in my life, but that's why I succeed." And so I'm coming at it from the flip side of what you're talking about. But I think that both of those situations stem from the same problem.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Both of them, although they seem like different circumstances, are not really. Because for a person who has low self-esteem, low self-image, doesn't feel real good about his or herself, it's devastating to fail. So even if they fail, they'll try to convince themselves and everybody else that they didn't fail. It's almost, in some cases, if we have a parent who was dominant in our upbringing, and that parent never, ever told us that we've succeeded or we're very happy with them, we're proud of them, they will try for the rest of their lives to be good enough so that they're whoever the parent was, and they may even be deceased at this point. Whatever that parent is, they still want to please them, because in every child there is the desire to cheat. There is a desire to please their parents, because they're the most important people to them at that point in their lives, and remain to be for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are overzealous in what they do. They overwork, they underrest and underplay, and then they just go 900 miles an hour because they're chasing a ghost. They're trying to make their mom or dad or both parents happy, and both parents have been long gone. And I just think that's kind of a miserable state of existence, because if the very people you're trying to please are not there, how are you going to achieve that? It's a self-defeating prophecy, because you can never achieve that. They're gone. They're not going to rain down praise from heaven. It's impossible.
And it is, and another example of this is I have a person that I see or used to see in therapy, and that person had never heard from his father how proud his father was of him. He heard it the first time when he was in his mid-50s, and that had such an incredible impact on him, because it was almost retroactive right to the beginning, to realize and put into perspective that he really did respect and appreciate his son. And to know that, even at this stage in life, is a great relief for people.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah. And I can relate to some of that. My dad was always working, and we really didn't connect on this specific issue about being proud of me and being happy about my life choices until much later in my life.
Uh-huh.
But it was a hard conversation. So I can understand that. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, especially in the context of this conversation, was, what are some things that we can encourage people who are striving to never fail, or striving to always succeed or overachieve, both ends. How do we give permission to people to fail, and how do we give permission to people who are struggling with succeeding? What are some things we can do to give them some encouragement?
Well, we'd like to encourage them, but the permission has to come from themselves. And that permission comes from the realization that it really isn't what your parents did when you were a kid. It really isn't all the failures or perceived failures that you've had in your life. Everybody who fails learns from that failure. And that is the value of a failure. And that's why you need permission to say, you know what, I messed up, or this is where my plan was flawed, and this is how I'm going to fix it. And that is the way that you fix most of the attitudes in your life. And success is nothing different. You have to be able to accept the fact that you succeeded. Some people, they shoot themselves in the foot when they start succeeding because they're afraid of succeeding, because that succeeding is counter to the lie that they've been told by themselves ever since they can remember.
Yeah, and I've dealt with some people who struggle with these issues separately. And one of the things that I always encourage from a practical standpoint is to just keep a running list of your successes. And I've even actually encouraged people to keep a running list of what you perceive the mistakes are. But hear me out. So I would encourage people who are struggling with failure to make a list of all the things that they did well. And I mean specifically, I got up on time, got to work on time, got my projects done. I got all these things done. And you look at that and you see that you're doing good things, even reading a book, just reading a blog article, anything you could look at to find a success in, and just say, look what you've done. Now just look at that. And then the next day, you do the same thing. And then you start accumulating all these little successes. And then you start seeing that, you really are succeeding in the day-to-day life, because we could talk all day about people who aren't doing those things well. And on the flip side, there's people who struggle with those mistakes. Okay, well, let's look at a mistake. What did you do? Well, I didn't do this. Okay, now let's break that down. From a practical standpoint, you messed up. What did you do immediately? How did you fix it? Let's look at the steps. And then asking this one simple question, what did you learn from it? And when you ask that question of somebody who is struggling with this issue, sometimes, I don't know, and you deal with much more serious issue. Sometimes for the people that I dealt with, just asking that one question helps them to change their perspective, because they don't look at it that way. All they're focused on is the failure. And you say, well, what did you learn from that? What do you mean, what did I learn from that? Well, what did you learn? I mean, you're not going to make that mistake again. You know what to do next time. You know how to better handle the situation, and you know what to look out for on the front end. And that perspective change can usually help people in the process.
Not only do they focus on the failure, but they focus on what they tell themselves about the failure. And there is the culprit right there. John, all the things that you said are very intuitive, which is why John is a great life coach. They have a lot to do with your perception and how you handle your everyday life. We don't sit and think about all the things that have happened to us and say, well, I was never given this by my parents, or I was never given that attitude from my parents. But you have to realize at some point in time, it's your responsibility to do that. And people who aren't unable to do that wind up with a very, very wish-washy definition of self. You have to define yourself and who you are, okay? And who you are is not a sum total of your failures or even a sum total of your successes. It is who you are inside. always remember that character is what you know in your heart to be true, and reputation is what people think about you who may not know you from a character standpoint. So you take your definition of who you are yourself and you write it down like John suggested. Keep it, add to the list all the time with the things that you failed and succeeded in, because failures are just as important as successes.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing is keeping in mind who you want to be. You have to have a very realistic perspective of who you are, but also figure out where you want to be. I don't want to be the same person that I am today tomorrow. I'd like to be better. I'd like to be better than I am now 5 years from now. I'd like to be further along in my career. I'd like to be further along in the amount of money that I make, the people that I know, the relationships that I'm deepening. I want to have these things. And so keeping your eye, with a really strong sense of self, like Lou's talking about, keeping your eye on who you are now, and then working towards being better each day so that you can become this person that you really want to be in the future. That also helps you keep that perspective focused on looking forward and not looking back and spinning those plates, as we like to talk about, of all those negative things, the hurts, the things that we did wrong, or maybe the things that we should have done better. That helps us to focus on forward thinking as opposed to backward negative thinking.
Right. There are people who are so wrapped up in this negative view of themselves that they actually replay every event every single night when they come home of the previous day. They replay it and they think about, well, if I had said this or I'd done that, then maybe I wonder what that person meant when they said, you know what, I think they have something against me. And it continues on, and we obsess. Hopefully we don't. So people will obsess over this. And I don't mean to make it flippant, but it's an important aspect of your personality. And if you're doing that, if you're going home every day and just replaying the events and who said what to who and when and where and why and how, you're wasting a lot of valuable time. You really are. You have better things to do in your life.
That's right. There's so many other things you're doing with that precious time. And that's the one resource that we can't get back. Cannot get back wasted time. And so, Lou and I just want to encourage you to do what you need to do to give yourself that permission to start thinking about the right perspective. And if you need to reach out to us, you can contact us at questions@reallifepodcast.com. You can also reach out to Lou at lifecarecounseling.net, or you can find me over at johncdonahue.com. And the best decision I ever made, because I was very guilty of doing that very thing that Lou is talking about, and spinning plates, thinking about situations over and over and over again, trying to figure out what I could have done better, what I should have said, and obsessing over it. The very best decision I ever made was reaching out to somebody like Lou. Well, somebody exactly like Lou, because it was Lou. And he helped me so much. And I say this time and time again, reaching out to a life coach, reaching out to a counselor, a therapist like Lou, anybody that can help you figure out how to get over this hurdle, that is not a sign of weakness. That is a sign of great strength.
Sure is. There's been this shroud of confusion and negativity that's been hanging over, mental health, coaching, all those things. And it's by people who either never have gone or don't have the desire to try to improve themselves. So don't listen to the yap that people say. Do whatever's in your heart and get the help that you need.
Right. It's vital, because you only have one life to live, which sounds like a soap opera title. But you really only have one life. You really only have a finite amount of time. And we need you to be your best. So if you can do something to change that perspective and to get healthy, the world needs you. We would love to hear your story. So reach out to us over at reallifepodcast.com and let us know if there's something we can do. We'd love to help.
Yep. John and I have dedicated a significant portion of our lives to helping others. And we're doing this for you. And hopefully it at some level has been a help to you. And if it has, please pass it on.
Yep.
I don't believe in coincidences, because things happen for a reason. And what you should do is listen to everything that goes on in your life. Don't take everything to heart, because maybe it isn't about you. Maybe the things that are about you are how you feel about yourself, and you project that to others. And that's what you want to. That's what you want to do. That's how you want to portray yourself to the public.
Right. I don't think I can add anything else to that, my friend. So, hey, if you want to find a little bit more out about us, you can come over to reallifepodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook at Real Life Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Real Life Cast. We would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. And every Wednesday, we have a brand new podcast that comes out talking about different topics that we think can be very helpful. And we want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter over at reallifepodcast.com, because each week we give you some great ideas, encouragement, motivation, direction, so that you can live your life at the next level. Well, I hope that was encouraging. I hope you got something from it. If you have a question or comment, you can always email us. Lou, thank you again for everything that you do for us.
You're very welcome, sir. And thank you as well.
You are very welcome. And guys, we want to encourage you to have an incredible week. Remember, real life, real hope, real help at the Real Life Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Real Life Podcast. Find out more information and sign up for the Real Life Podcast newsletter at reallifepodcast.com. You can also learn more about our hosts, Lou Carfisi at lifecarecounseling.net and John Donahue at johncdonahue.com. And remember, live your life to the fullest. And as always, we want to encourage you to choose to be awesome, because when you choose to be awesome, you will be. Have a great week, everyone.